Hello everyone, it's Paul and welcome to another installment of my Blackrock Foundry raid guides. In today's video I'll be covering Kromog on heroic difficulty. Kromog is a big double chin bastard and he hits your tanks real fucking hard. There is also extensive raid damage going out, so it is a fight that is almost entirely up to your healers and your tanks not being shit. Now here's the funny thing about this video, I play like absolute shit. I will die 3 times in this entire video and I will explain to you why. So that you can hopefully avoid those mistakes when you are doing this with your raid team. The first things that I'm going to cover, however, are the non-tank mechanics, because I will spend the majority of this video in the later half talking just about tanks. The next ability Kromog will do is called Rippling Smash. This will cause him to face in a direction, slam his elbow into the ground, and then shoot rocks in a cone effect in that direction. You will also see lots of little gold sonic circles flying out of Kromog. Those are called reverberations and they follow every rippling smash and every slam. Make sure your raid is dodging these reverberations as they do a fair amount of damage. The major ability your raid has to worry about is called Rune of Grasping Earth. This will cause this pattern of runes to display on the ground, and after a short period of time those runes will form into a stone hand and they will grab whoever's standing on that rune. Kromog will then cast Thundering Blows, which will do massive damage to anybody that is not in the safety of a hand. However, the hands do damage themselves and extensive raid healing will be required at the end of this phase. In order to master this phase, you should really predetermine raid positioning before you even pull the boss. We use a raid add-on tool called Exorcist Raid Tool. Sorry if I butchered that. It is an add-on that everybody needs to have installed in your raid group, but it makes that phase really trivial, and I'll explain it the next time we do that Rune of Grasping Earth phase. Alright, so one of my very heroic deaths is coming up here, and it's going to be to a combination of 2 tank mechanics that this boss does. The first of these is called Warped Armor. This will slow you by 15% and increase the physical damage that you take by 30% per each stack of the debuff. The other ability is called Fists of Stone, and that is actually what leads to my death here. Fists of Stone is cast on the highest threat target, but it is split evenly between 2 targets that are within 15 yards of each other. You'll see it demonstrated as a little bit of like an earthquake effect underneath both me and Hyhudia here. And this means that for the duration of the fight, both of your tanks should be stacked up. The other major tank ability for this fight is called Slam, which you see cast there. Now there's been a lot of debate about how Slam actually works, but in my experience, this is what we found. Slam targets the main tank, and the point where that main tank is standing becomes the center point of what I'll call a damage circle. While the ability is casting, both tanks should do their best to run as far away from that slam point as possible, keeping in mind that they have to come back so that he doesn't keep channeling Stone Breath. The farther you are away from that originating point, the less damage you're going to take. Now my next death will actually come to a slam, so I'll talk about that and the other ability that the raid has to worry about a little bit later. But first, I promised that I would talk about this Grasping Earth phase and how we use Exorcist raid tools to set it up better. Once everybody in your raid has downloaded Exorcist raid tools, all you have to do is hit /RT and then go to the boss mod section and hit Kromog. When you click the Kromog button, it'll bring up this little map which will show all of the room positions during the entire encounter. Your raid lead can then assign spots to the people depending on how you want to configure your raid for this little hands phase. The way we've chosen to do this is we have a warrior in the very middle surrounded by the healers, and all of the other DPS are on the outside. The 2 tanks are in the top left corner so that we can get to our spot the quickest after we're broken out of our runes. Once the spots are assigned, you will get a little arrow on your screen which you can also configure the placement of through the add-on, and this arrow will always guide you to the correct rune. If you pay attention to my UI during the next rune phase, you'll see this arrow pop up at the top of my screen. It'll be nice and green and guide me to the proper rune. Now when we break out of Grasping Earth here, I'm actually going to splice in a section of video that's going to come up later, but I really want to emphasize it. It's actually the last ability that your ranged has to worry about, and it's called Rune of Crushing Earth. Rune of Crushing Earth will place a red rune onto the ground. It will then summon 2 hands which will clap together very shortly thereafter. Now sometimes this takes 25 seconds to happen and sometimes it happens quick. Your range stack is going to have to figure that out. I'm sorry I don't have better footage of that. But again, this was a kill attempt and I was kind of focused on not dying, which I also failed at. So as a tank, what would be my biggest tips to other tanks during this fight? First of all, always have your active mitigation up as much as possible. I miss shield blocks here and there. I miss barriers here and there. I was trying to kind of pool resources for slams, but I also wasn't doing that very well. So keep in mind all of these defensive things and play very safely. Another thing that I died to on a couple of wipes is when I charged back in, sometimes the DK wasn't quite back, so Fists of Stone would actually just hit me. And whenever that happens, you basically need a cooldown to stay alive. And that brings me to my other point, cooldown management. Don't be afraid to use your cooldowns when you get into a rough situation. As a warrior tank, after watching the replay of this fight and looking over the logs, I'm going to start using more heavier defensives at 2 stacks of warped armor. I had been waiting for those rare times when I actually get up to 3 stacks, but there's really no reason. I can just use them at 2. Using shield block and shield barrier to mitigate slam and whatever the mirrors of those abilities would be for other classes will also help tremendously, especially if you do something like I do here where you tunnel on the boss's health bar. I was actually watching for the 30% marker and I didn't run away fast enough for a slam. So slam gets credit for my second death during this fight. The other thing you're kind of responsible for as a tank in this fight is making sure that you call for external cooldowns, be that hand of sack, wings, bark skin, vigilance from your DPS warriors, vigilance that I'm putting on the DK. All of that is going to help you survive the sub 30% parts of this fight. Right there, tunnel vision on the health boss, didn't get far enough away. I got crunched by that slam real fucking hard. This fight will test you. It will challenge you to make the best of your tanking abilities, especially once he hits 30% and starts to frenzy. Now as far as tricks go, I know DKs and monks can stay pretty close to that slam impact point without very many issues. Warriors, heroic leap works great as long as you're charging right back in and then finding that other tank so that you guys can share Fists of Stone. And again, you guys know your class better than I do, so just do your best to maximize the amount of defensive cooldowns and damage reduction that you have going out. Now, I know it sounds like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but it really is how you skin this cat. The fight has a nasty habit of surprising you with things like a melee hit followed right by a Fist of Stone, which is what happens to me here sub 30% in this frenzy. And I'll actually even have shield wall up, but I didn't use it because I was saving it for later. Don't do that. Use it when you feel like you need it. There is a lot of damage going out. I've also seen tips where people say like warriors, you can leap this phase, you don't have to get into an earth. I think that's a lot of unnecessary damage. Yeah, it's perfectly doable, but you generally have to keep a cooldown going because Thundering Blow still does do a fair amount of damage to you even though you're a tank. So here's what I'm talking about. 2 stacks of warped armor, 70% health, shield wall is not used, and I'm dead. I mean, basically that's a one shot. I could have saved it. I could have prevented it, and I'm pissed at myself for not having done it. So hopefully my mistakes help you do better at this. But look at our DK. DK is going strong. He's going to end up tanking the rest of this, and I think he goes down about 2 or 1%, and then the rest of the raid finishes it off. So not by any means a clean kill, but enough for the guide, and I'm really glad I got to do this for you, and I'm actually kind of glad that I made the mistakes, so hopefully I prevent some of that for you guys. And that about covers Kromog for you. So, as always, thank you for watching. Feel free to leave any comments or questions down below. And stop by Twitch on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern for the stream of my raid. I'd also like to thank you guys for the positive reception on the WoW subreddit the other day. That made me feel pretty good. We're going to be working on Iron Maidens all this week, and hopefully I'll get that video to you soon. This has been Paul. See you next time.